If you ever see someone in the limelight saying something so outrageous that you can't believe that it could possibly be real, but then it turns out to be very real, and you see that often enough, you probably won't be surprised by what I'm about to show you now, especially if you're at all familiar with the things Pastor Jimmy Martin of the Jesuit Church or Francis have said in the recent past. But they are the penitential gift that keeps on giving, providing those of us seeking things to make acts of reparation for in our lives of prayer and penance as Catholics seeking to live fuller lives of faith that keep giving us more to work with. But sometimes even the most basic things these guys say will sometimes startle you for how brazen they are, and unfortunately, that is what I have for you today. So strap yourselves in because it's time to dive into the world of fresh and bizarre Jesuit statements. But first, I wanted to thank the patrons of this channel for their continued support. It really does enable the work of this channel to continue and to grow. If you want to join the supporters of this channel, you can do so through Patreon or Subscribestar for as little as $1 a month. There are other options in the description box as well. It really does help this channel to keep going and to grow. And please support the other content creators you like as well. We are all going through some very strange time around here these days. Thanks. Back to our story. All that out of the way, few of the regular viewers of this channel will be surprised to see some fresh new heterodox statements coming from a future formal member of the hierarchy, Pastor Jimmy Martin of the Jesuit Church, who is best known for his bridge-building campaign designed to get Catholics to accept all manner of things that the Decalogue and St. Paul warned us not to accept, which I usually call the Pastor Jimmy Martin issue. Nor will you be at all surprised to see Francis using his perceived papal authority to absolutely sow confusion and informally teach things that run contrary to the Catholic faith. That is pretty par for the course these days, to be honest, but it is my duty to give you things to pray for, especially in the time of Lent. The fact that many of you trust people like me more than someone like Pastor Jimmy is saying something about the state of the church, but why shouldn't it with the organization tweeting out things like this? Catholics, must we be so obsessed with Jesus' death and suffering this Lent? Now, this caused quite the stir on Twitter when it happened, and I always take notice when the traditionally minded Catholics I follow start tweeting American Magazine articles, which is run by the Jesuits, or at their account, partly because I don't like having anything from modern Jesuits in my feed. Now, before I dive into this, I'll say that they have tweeted out some articles that are at least more Catholic appearing than this one since that time, and that's a good thing. Articles about the need to forgive, how our suffering unites us to Christ, that love was an essential part of creation, all those good things. But that's kind of how it works with them. It's like things Francis says. He'll say some Catholic-sounding things, release the occasional document that sounds Catholic, like his declaration of this being the year of St. Joseph, although that document actually had a lot of problems in it. And then they'll wrap it up in an ambiguity and follow it with their usual, more famous kinds of stuff. But this still needs to be addressed. And here's the real quote from the article. Quote, "The Jesus in our childhood wood-grain brown Stations of the Cross pamphlets had no face. Jesus' face was just a blank space of beige. Why no eyes, no mouth, no nose, no face? To unsettle us? Is it symbolic? Is it to signify that our faces are meant to be there? That we are Christ somehow? Why no face? Something is profoundly wrong with Jesus. Why the gloom? The stomach-churning, blank-faced Jesus? Is it because the gloom and sadness will come anyway, so that we might as well stop and worship it? To claim for the Church that unlovely appellation, misery, before someone else tacks it onto us? To get in front of it, so to speak, the news cycle, to own the story before it owns us." End quote. Now that's kind of strange, isn't it? He goes on to say that the soldiers at the foot of the cross in his childhood pamphlet didn't have faces either, which was probably to signify our being placed in their stead. Pro tip to parents and catechists: design better catechetical materials that aren't mildly the stuff of nightmares. Otherwise, your sons just might grow up to join the Jesuits. That article is by someone calling himself Joe Hoover, S.J. Anyway, he then gets to this. Quote, "Why are we so fixed on death? Consider the stations of light. Have you ever heard of such a thing? In the Catholic Church, stations of light? They are real. Oh, that these could become as popular as the dispiriting ones. The stations of light have been around for 30-some years. After 2,000 years of spears and nails, we finally got around to celebrating the resurrection. Mary Magdalene runs to tell the others. Hearts are burning on the road. fingers in wounds, fish by the sea, feed my lambs, end quote. And he goes on and on like that and never explains why Lent is a time why we focus on the passion of our blessed Lord. But that's Jimmy Martin's organization for you. Yes, the erstwhile Jesuit minister operates that magazine, which is one of the standard bearers for modernism, if there ever really was one. And as for the Stations of Light, that whole concept seems rather strange to me, especially in Lent. If you're not familiar with them, they focus on the resurrection of Jesus and his post-resurrection mission. And there are reasons why we don't do that in Lent. Someone should remind the Jesuits of that. And honestly, I personally don't adhere to any devotion that is only like 30 years old. That seems ill-advised to me. By the way, the responses on Twitter to that article have been pretty good, mostly reminding the Jesuits what Lent is truly about. Good on all of you who take on that Sisyphean task like that. Which brings us to Pastor Jimmy himself. He posted this gem on Facebook. Quote, "Preaching for the second Sunday of Lent, Vicki McBride reflects on everything that changed last Lent and offers a reflection on allowing God to reveal herself to us. You don't need to be good, you just need to try your best to be receptive, to recognize that God might be trying to reach out to you right where you are. Settle in, say to God, 'Here I am.' Sit and be with God, and God will let you glimpse her power." Vicki McBride is the director of campus ministry at St. Martin de Porres High School, Cristo Rey, in Cleveland, Ohio. Prior to working at St. Martin, she lived and worked in Brownsville, Texas, as a teacher in the Alliance for Catholic Education, earning her Master's of Education degree at the university, end quote. Now, there's a lot of things off about that statement. Let me know in the comments if you can find all the things wrong with them. And I'll just say that our blessed Lord spoke of God as Father, which is as one of my patrons pointed out, if Pastor Jimmy is addressing God this way, if he's okay with it, what does Pastor Jim think of the relationship between God the Father and Our Lady? The other thing is this. Go get your Douay-Rheims Bible or Knox Bible or any pre-conciliar translation and read St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, right around, say, chapter 14, verse 34. That's all I'll say on that score because what else really is there to say? Instead, I'll point out this. Pastor Jimmy is a consultant to the Vatican's communications office. He has office space in Rome and everything. He's on their radar for promotion to being a bishop eventually. If you remember how and when Bishop Barron was promoted in 2013 or 2014, right around that time, get ready to see that again. But even more fun this time with Pastor Jimmy, because with him, his errors are brazen and done with a sense of mission and pride in his work. Not really so with Bishop Barron, who is much savvier at spreading modernism draped in orthodoxy than Martin ever will be. But remember, the unifying theme here is the Jesuits, which brings us to the Jesuit-in-Chief, Pope Francis, who said over the weekend something truly enlightening, truly special. Headline from Vatican News. Pope Francis, a faith without doubts cannot advance. Apparently the book talks about how those situations where our faith wanes can help us to grow in our faith, though he might want to have a talk with St. Thomas Aquinas and other great saints, because while there are saints who went through a dark night of the soul and wavered, there are many examples of saints who did not waver either, and he is saying that you can't have faith without having wavered. Thanks, Francis. Thanks a lot. From the article, quote, "Finally, Pope Francis speaks of faith tested by doubts. The devil puts doubts in us, then life happens along with its tragedies. Why does God allow this? But a faith without doubts cannot advance. The thought of being abandoned by God is an experience of faith which many saints have experienced, along with many people today who feel abandoned by God, but do not lose faith. They take care to watch over the gift. Right now I feel nothing, but I guard the gift of faith. The Christian who has never gone through these states of mind lacks something, because it means that they have settled for less. Situations of bad faith are not failures against faith. On the contrary, they reveal the need and desire to enter more fully into the depths of the mystery of God. A faith without these trials leads me to doubt that it is true faith." End quote. Now that's quite the statement. Sure, there's some truth to what he's saying, that the devil sows doubts in our minds about our faith, and that we can grow in faith through this struggle. Great, fine. But to say that he doubts those who don't go through that? Again, read the lives of the saints. Get a good biography on some of the saints. Chesterton's biography on St. Thomas Aquinas is a masterpiece, and there are numerous others as well, that show that this definitely is not always the case. And you might bristle that I'm using a saint as a point of comparison, but they are precisely who we should be modeling our lives of prayer and virtue after. Reject the notion that we should have doubts. We shouldn't. We should instead stay steadfast at the foot of the cross, spend time in bathing in the presence of our Eucharistic Lord, either in a formal adoration situation or in front of a tabernacle. And in those times of doubts, don't embrace it. Reject it with prayer, asking for the gift of greater faith. I mean, this is Catholicism 101 stuff here, the kinds of things that they teach in any basic RCIA class if it is any good at all. Which brings me to the final point. People sometimes wonder why catechesis is as bad as it is today. Look at the teachers in the faith we have from these examples. Now, you might not think America Magazine isn't engaged in that, but you'd be wrong. How many parishes have you seen that magazine displayed in? I've seen them in quite a few, including in country parishes that you'd expect to be pretty steadfast and would reject what that outfit is trying to peddle. They have a lot of influence, and many new Catholics look to those organizations for guidance and walk out of their RCIA classes confirmed as Catholics but having embraced not only modernism, but a particularly nasty variant of it. That is the issue here. After so many ambiguous statements and strange public statements, rebranding God into something that is more pleasing to the world instead of calling for repentance and living the gospel, we can only assume that these figures are not even attempting to promote Catholicism, but instead are part of building the prophesized ape of the church. That should disturb anyone. And if you're not familiar with the concept of the ape of the church, look up my We Were Warned series. Let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments, please. What do you think of Pastor Jimmy's statement or the presentation he was promoting? How about Francis's statement about doubt? Again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And like and subscribe if you haven't, and click that notification bell. I've been told that some people aren't getting notified about my videos, so click that bell. It might help. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.